So what is Tempe Accelerates?
This is a wonderful opportunity to give the presenters and the various areas that are presenting your comments. That's really what this is all about. This is a constructive process to help all the different areas of the city come together and help us all achieve our goals.
Tempe Accelerates is a way to present our overarching goals and achievements to make Tempe a better place.
We will be discussing the cardiac arrest survival rates and our council priority of being safe and secure.
These measurable goals operationalize the 5 council priorities for our cities, such as safe and secure communities, quality of life, sustainable growth and development, financial stability and vitality, and strong community connections.
So our performance measure is number 4.11 to achieve a tree canopy of 25 trees per acre on our as an average on our city properties.
This is an opportunity for the community and Tempe employees to participate by offering ideas and solutions, as well as asking questions about how to reach our targets.
I'm going to talk about 2 performance measures that focus on energy. The first one is energy reduction. So this is a dashboard showing the Kiwanis Recreation Center after the solar carports were installed, and the pink area shows you all the energy consumption at the Kiwanis Rec Center, and the green bars show the solar panels, the solar energy production.
The sessions consist of presentations from different departments and partners that show the goal's current measure as well as our target for the future. The departments also discuss the efforts and strategies we are making in order to achieve our desired performance.
And so we have a very visionary goal, and that is to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes to 0.
So we're here to talk about feeling of safety in parks, and the specific council priority that looks at or is under is safe and secure communities.
Join us for Tempe Accelerates, a series of data-driven collaborative strategy sessions to explore how these goals help the community and what we can do to reach our targets.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Ching, Tempe City Manager. Welcome to another session of Tempe Accelerates. We have 2 presentations for today on performance measure 2.06, police trust score, and 2.21, satisfaction with availability of city information. These presentations will be about 10 minutes each. We invite you to suggest strategies in the Q&A feature of the Teams application, and we will have the presenters discuss after each of their presentations. You can find that feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. A feedback survey will be available on our website. We will provide the link in the Q&A, and we would appreciate you filling that out. In addition, we will provide links to our performance measures dashboard so you can explore and join us in achieving the positive outcomes that we want for our community. There may, from time to time, be time delays and technical challenges as we go through the presentations, and we appreciate your patience as we work through those. Although our staff who puts together the Accelerates sessions are outstanding, and I know have anticipated many of these, and we have fixed them. So without further ado, let me introduce the first presentation team on measure 2.06, police trust score. We have Angelique Beltran, our Police Bureau Manager, and Jeff Glover, Tempe's Interim Police Chief. Take it away.
Good afternoon. My name is Angelique Beltran, and I am the Police Bureau Manager for Data and Technology.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Glover, Chief of Police for the City of Tempe. So let's get started. This presentation will cover performance measure 2.06, public trust score. Next slide. Our performance measure seeks to achieve trust scores between 80 and 100 on a scale of 0 to totally disagree to 100 totally agree across all demographic categories as measured by the monthly police sentiment survey. As of January 1st, 2020, the current baseline is 69. Our monthly average is currently at 70. Next slide. Why does this matter? At the end of the day, policing is about safety for everyone, and the path to safety is built on trust. Trust to solve problems. The community empowers the police department to do our jobs and to problem solve in a professional manner. Trust for difficult conversations, seeking the feedback from our community on how we can provide better service and admitting when we can do better. Trust to know people can reach out. And this comes from finding ways to reach out to underserved community members and ensuring that we're delivering equitable service. Trust that we are all in this together, and we will improve as a police department by taking a collaborative approach with our community. Next slide. Looking forward, smaller patrol areas for closer connection and accountability. This allows us to better engage with our community members. Public Safety Task Force and Right to Breathe initiatives. These items are in process and includes completing department-wide de-escalation training, research-based dispatch focused by de-escalation training, transferring mental health calls to professional crisis line. This is essentially diverting crisis calls to human services personnel as opposed to the police department. And wellness, taking care of people so that they can take care of themselves and take care of other people, which would include having a wellness coordinator within the police department. Next slide. Bureau Manager Angelique Beltran will now present on the data slides.
The police sentiment survey is conducted monthly by Elucid. The survey samples online respondents using apps, websites, and social media, and targeting them through digital advertisements. On average, between 300 to 500 Tempe residents are sampled monthly, and in 2020, 4,511 residents responded to these surveys. The short survey asked residents on a scale of 0 to 10 about trust in police and feelings of safety in their neighborhoods. Specifically, for the trust score, the survey asks, how much do you agree with these statements? The police in my neighborhood treat local residents with respect. The police in my neighborhood listen to and take into account the concerns of local residents. Elucid uses U.S. Census data to reach a demographic audience that matches our population, and will also conduct surveys in multiple languages. The collected demographic data includes age, race, ethnicity, geography, sex, income level, and education level. For half of these categories, there was no significant differences in scores in 2020. The demographics within asterisks here had notable differences, which we'll cover, but before I want to cover the citywide scores for 2020. Next slide. Here we see the citywide monthly trust scores from the police sentiment survey. Again, this data is collected monthly, and our performance measure is evaluated annually. Evaluating the score annually allows for the natural ebbs and flows related to national and local events that occur. As you can see, the range covered a 10-point spread between 65 and 75 in any given month. The monthly average was 70 out of 100. These scores have not fluctuated dramatically, but do change in small amounts from month to month. Elucid surveys a few other similarly sized cities and reports that Tempe's trust scores are on par with other similarly sized cities. Next, we'll look at the areas in which there were notable differences in trust score. Next slide. This slide shows the average trust score by respondent race. This is one area in which we showed a statistically significant difference between respondents. Specifically, those who reported that they were of an other race showed a significantly lower trust in police compared to the citywide average. While this is a small proportion of our population, approximately less than 7%, it is an area for review and potential strategy. There were no significant differences, as you can see, between the citywide averages and people of African American, Asian American, Hispanic, or white races. Next slide. This slide depicts average scores for trust in police by age of respondent. These scores increase with age. This is the second area in which the results indicate notable differences for trust by demographic group. Here, the respondents aged 18 to 34 had scores significantly lower than the citywide average, and those over 55 had scores significantly higher than the citywide average. Next slide. There are also significant geographic differences in trust in police based on geography. Respondents in North Tempe reported significantly lower scores than the citywide average, while those in South Tempe reported scores that were significantly higher. This may be a result of how other demographics are situated. For example, North Tempe may have a higher concentration of younger respondents due to the presence of ASU, which could impact the score. Next slide. Now we'll turn it back over to Chief Glover.
For equity, we have received high marks on trust from our community and annual satisfaction surveys, and we are working to ensure we provide a high level of service for all demographics in our community. Our police department have great employees that work for it, and we continue to do good work for our community. But we have trust that must be rebuilt within our community. On January the 15th of 2019, Antonio Arce was shot and killed by one of our officers. This incident should not have happened. We've learned some hard lessons from this case that will help us to improve our relationship with community members. Next slide. Strategies. Smaller geographic areas that are going to be more focused, which allows for us to better engage with our community members. Shared data and public-facing dashboards, which allows for transparency. Chief's Advisory Panel. This will keep community members engaged with the department activities and provide an active role in reshaping policy. Connecting with our community through social media allows for the police department to disseminate informative information to our community. Crime reduction. Our main goal is to effectively fight crime to ensure a safe and secure community. Employee wellness. The better we care for our employees through resources, the better work product that we are able to provide to our community. Next slide. Challenges. Nationwide events and the local impact. We are seeing the challenges we currently experience in law enforcement, and we have to own that. And we have to make the necessary changes for overall improvement for public sentiment. Ebb and flow of community sentiment as it relates to our illicit reporting each month. Public sentiment can change frequently, especially during times of civil unrest in the country. Non-police related concerns. This is related to the feedback that is provided from the public sentiment survey that has responses that are non-police related in nature. And rebuilding trust that has been damaged. The police department will continue to work on relationships within the community while seeking to provide a high level of service to our community that will help to improve our overall scores related to the public trust. Next slide. Your ideas for acceleration. We'll take any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Angelique. I'm Wydell Holmes. I'm a strategy analyst with the City of Tempe's Strategic Management and Diversity Office, and I'll be moderating our strategy session over the next 20 minutes. I do have an announcement, and as Tempe Accelerates is a community strategy session, we will be hosting additional sessions regarding the performance measure for police trust. Our next live session will be in Spanish on May 4th at 6:30, and we'll be following with an evening session in mid-May. You can see the schedule of our events at tempe.gov/Tempe Accelerates. So as a reminder to our audience, we do invite you to suggest strategies in the Q&A feature of the Teams application. As our city manager mentioned earlier, you can find that feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And I'll combine similar themes if I get multiple questions related to the same topics. If we have more ideas and suggestions than we do have time for our scheduled time today, I'll be as diverse as possible. You're also invited to send your suggestions directly to the presenters using the email addresses you see now on the screen. So for our first item, we have an item from a neighbor in the Shalimar neighborhood of Tempe, and they're concerned that previously they've had block watch leaders and had a great relationship with the police department. They used to have the name of their patrol person and how to contact that person, but it's no longer true for most of them that have responded and been included on this question and email. So they also used to host special get-togethers with the police that they experienced about once a year. And so they would like to reconnect with the police department. How can they go about doing that? And what are the strategies about connecting with neighborhoods?
Yeah, so this is great feedback. Generally, we have felt there, this too, where, we want to make sure that we are having a closer connection with our community members. And this is a large reason why we're transitioning back to the beat officer concept and getting the local beat officers and sergeants to be more engaged with our community members. We've had great success from that, having deploying that model and in the past. And so we're looking forward to actually going back into that area and being able to ensure that we're creating that connection, and we're ensuring that we are, really attending, all of our neighborhood association meetings and our homeowner association meetings as we are getting past the pandemic as well.
Great. Thank you, Chief. We do have another question. In which specific areas do you believe Tempe Police have lost trust with Tempe residents, and what are your strategies for addressing that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question one
Sure.
more time?
In which specific areas do you believe Tempe Police have lost trust with Tempe residents?
So I believe that in terms of the trust that has been lost with our Tempe residents, it has to deal with service. It comes back down to service. In recent events that we have had, we have fallen a bit short in the way that we have provided service. We've had some things that have played out in the media, locally, nationally, and the professionalism of how we have handled certain calls for service obviously has made an impact and an impression within the community. And so we want to ensure that we're instilling the professionalism that is needed within the police department, as well as making sure that our patrol officers that are great customer service representatives that are keeping that in mind when they are actually interacting with our community. We also have Assistant Chief Mike Pooley on the call, who also is over our patrol field operations, and I'll also allow for him to chime in as well.
Thanks, Chief. One of the things I would say is, as we've gone out to these community meetings, we've really been able to connect with a lot of our community members to see what their concerns are. And some of these concerns are valid concerns, but at the same time, some of them are not just able to be solved by the police department, which is why we work with all the city departments, which may include traffic intensity or homelessness or other issues that we're really working to help mitigate. When it comes to trust, there's a lot of different factors that come into it. We were able to go to a community meeting last night where there were between 80 to 100 members of an apartment complex, and to connect with them one-on-one, we were able to see how that personal interaction is something that a lot of our residents want, and that's what we want to do. We want to get out there, start connecting, kind of going back with the last question with the Shalimar. That excites me because we want to get out there as well.
Great. Thank you, Mike. We have another question, and it's regarding the technology strategies that are being used to help better engage police officers with the public to grow trust. Can you speak to that?
Yes, Bureau Manager Angelique Beltran, would you be able to speak to that?
Sure, I can jump in and answer some of that. So we are constantly looking at different ways to advance technology to allow officers to do their jobs better. One of the things that we try to balance is the need for more technology against all the technology we already use. We have a significant amount of technology already at our fingertips, so sometimes we are looking to better use technology we already have, and other times we're looking at bringing new technology on board. We're currently in the process of evaluating a victim notification system. We want to be able to contact and notify victims more easily when there are changes to their case. For example, if a person who has committed a crime against them is arrested, we want to be able to notify them in a prompt manner. And so we're looking at adding software that actually would benefit the community greatly with our usage of it. We are also looking at bringing on electronic accidents and citations. We do a lot of electronic collection for data now, but we do not currently collect electronic accidents or citations. And so we're going to be looking at bringing that forward as well. So if someone out there has ideas, we're more than willing to hear them. We have a good list of things that we're working towards. We're trying to obviously balance too much data because we can get a little bit of a data overload, but we're trying our best to balance the needs of both the community and the needs of the officers to better do their job.
Thank you, Angelique. We have a question actually from a neighbor in the Optimus Park area, and it's in regards to fireworks that are being set off in the community. And they would like for you to know that they don't want to bother the police, but what can be done about this?
Well, we definitely want them to bother us. That is something that we want them to be able to call in and basically provide that feedback. I mean, we do need to know if there is significant issues as it relates to fireworks, because obviously as you get closer to some of the holidays, that becomes a big problem. But it also becomes a major problem for our pets, our animals that that we have in the community. That becomes an even larger issue of the animals, either running off away from home, from and becoming strays. And so we want to avoid that. So we definitely need to know about any type of fireworks. Definitely, if it's something that's airborne. That is obviously illegal because it becomes a potential hazard. And so there are some strategies in place of strengthening up our policies to ensure that fines are going to actually take place when we actually do ensure that we actually have somebody that is that we're dealing with in that situation. So we want to make sure that we're holding them accountable as well.
Thank you, Chief. We know that trust is created through strong connections with our community. What programs exist for people to learn more about policing? Some agencies do teen academies, citizen academies, cadet or explorer programs. What are we currently doing with Tempe PD, or what plans do you have in the future?
Yeah, so let me kick that over to Assistant Chief Pooley.
Thanks, Chief. Well, I'll tell you, a lot of the things that we have been doing, unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't able to do. We have our officers that get engaged with the youth, especially as one of our biggest targets as at the schools with school resource officers. We also have partnered with other agencies and other departments where our officers are going out there and coaching, whether it be flag football or other sports where we're getting involved. Obviously, there's a lot more that we need to do with our youth and other areas of the city, and we're hoping that we can accomplish that over the next several months and this year, to include even bringing back our cadet program, which we had to stop at the end of COVID or at the beginning of COVID last year as well.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. And what strategies are we utilizing in Tempe for employee wellness? Are we expanding any mental health or training programs for officers?
So yes, we utilize our peer support team to be able to help provide some additional support on our with our officers to be able to better care for themselves. They are very well trained. They go out and they receive national training to be able to better care for the officers that are involved in critical incidents. Besides that, the other additional piece as it relates to just the wellness part is that we've put in supplementals for a wellness coordinator that would also be a part of assisting us with our peer support team. And additionally, with that piece as well, is that they would be able to essentially work in tandem with our current peer support team leads to be able to better manage that program to ensure that we are actually providing enough care for the officers actually in the realm of training as well. It is extremely important that we provide as much training and care for the officers as possible, because as they go out on the street, as long as they, basically are well taken care of and they are in the right frame of mind, they go out there and they're able to conduct business and be able to be, at their best within this profession.
Thank you, Chief. We have a question about strategy related to engagement of neighborhood residents and businesses, and an idea about leveraging an online platform to help with collaboration and connection on best practices and how to reach out for help. The example is given grouping business owners by sector, hospitality industry or financial sector, and neighborhood groups by geographic location. How do you see that strategy fitting in?
So I think that's a great strategy for transparency, and I know that there's some avenues or some ways that we're already engaging on platforms currently right now, with Nextdoor and other modes of communication that we're currently doing, and we're always looking to expand on that. So anytime that we can get feedback or any assistance in terms of things that our community believe that we should be engaged in, we're always looking to expand on that.
And I have another question from a viewer in regards to trust. And this is specifically for Chief Glover. What does this trust survey number mean to you? And is it concerning to you that it's low, below target?
So in terms of the trust survey and the current score, I believe that we're about 12 points away from where our desired goal is of 80. And so I don't think that it's at all, disconcerting. I think that there's just more work to do. And this allows for us the opportunity to engage with our community, learn a little bit more about where we need to work in order to improve our trust score and to continue that dialogue. There's always going to be things that we need to do to increase that. And we are always seeking and looking to learn and get feedback on how we can improve. And I think that that's going to help us reach our goal. And what I would like to see is that we exceed that goal and be able to maintain that at a high level.
Thank you. Another question is, what are Tempe's strategies to strengthen the relationship between the police and people of color?
So, that's a very, complex situation, as we've, over the years have seen that there's been a lot of challenges with communities of color and the policing, and sometimes are over policing within certain small segments or areas of society. Myself being a person who grew up from Compton, California, and being involved in this and in this profession and just from a professional and personal level, it certainly starts with really having a human connection, and it's being able to really learn and get past each other's biases to listen and learn from each other. A big part of this is really it goes back to the old saying is that it's hard to hate up close. And so the more that we are actually being able to engage with our community and be able to really interact with them, and they learn about us and we learn more from them, I think that that helps to build a relationship. And so it's something that is continuous in nature. You can't meet with an individual and one time and expect that to be a relationship. It has to be a repeated theme where you go out and you really intentionally, actively go out and really meet with your community members and be open with them.
And specifically, what procedural and operational strategy changes does Tempe PD need to make to strengthen trust with the Tempe community?
Well, I think that we're fortunate that the survey shows that, high levels of support from our community members. That said, we aim for lofty goals to ensure even higher levels of trust for everyone. This involves, strengthening our policy, our training, but again, it's more important to have better person-to-person connection. This is in part, why we return to the smaller beat areas to have better personal connections and accountability as we seek to improve on what we're doing.
Right. Thank you. We have a technical question in regards to the survey itself. And a viewer would like to know how outlier responses are dealt with on the surveys. An example provided is the DUI arrestee from last month that gave all zeros for all the questions. So how do we deal with outliers when we're talking about the data?
Bureau Manager Watson or Beltran, would you like to answer that?
Sure. I actually will bring Brooks into the conversation if she's on the phone. She helps us collect the data from Lucid. If you are here, Brooks, if you'd like to chime in on that, I'd love to hear.
Hi, I'm Brooks Luton, and I am the Strategic Planning Analysis and Research Center Supervisor with Tempe PD. So it's interesting that you asked that question. In order to protect user privacy and anonymity, Tempe PD does not actually receive individual level scores. So we never have data on if there was a DUI arrestee who provided all zeros. And that is something that Lucid handles on their back end as part of their process. And so it's something that we as a department don't actually handle.
Thank you, Dr. Luton. One final question before we wrap up our time and we go into our next session with Tempe Accelerates for availability of city information and our resident satisfaction with our efforts. What are the recommendations that are being implemented that came out of the task force, the Public Safety Advisory Task Force?
So a number of them have already been in the works, like just different policy changes in training, or it's just Dimension 2. Others that are in the work, but that are not completely limited to what we've already discussed, are working on call diversion for crisis mental health calls for service that don't necessarily require police response. Developing evidence-based de-escalation training for our dispatchers, improved public data sharing, improved communication and transparency, especially following major incidents in our city. Developing community affairs focus with direct connection to city manager's office, and focus on employee wellness to ensure that we have a healthy work team to serve the community. And those are some of the things from the task force that we're currently working on or have been working on.
Right. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank our presenters from the Tempe Police Department, Chief Glover, Angelique Beltran, Assistant Chief Mike Pooley, as well as Dr. Brooks Welton. We are putting the session schedule in the chat, and you can see what our future Tempe Acceleration schedules look like from there. But also a reminder again that we will be doing a additional Tempe Accelerate session on PD Trust Score. The next one will be on May 4th at 6:30 p.m. in Spanish. And then in mid-May, we'll be also doing an evening session with the chief and his colleagues. So with that, I will turn it back over to our our city manager, Andrew Ching. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rydell, and thank you to the presenting team from the police department. Great presentation and really great discussion as well on a very important topic. All right, now we will move on to the second presentation for this afternoon. And that is with, I will just scroll just quickly, 2.21, satisfaction with availability of city information. The presenters will be Shannon Reed and Nikki Ripley. So without further ado, take it away.
Hello, my name is Shannon Reed. I'm a public information officer with the City of Tempe.
And hi, I'm Nikki Ripley. I'm manager of the Communication and Media Relations Division of the City Manager's Office. So let's get started. We're here to talk with you today about performance measure 2.21, and that is one of the survey-related questions that we ask on the annual resident survey. Many of our residents, one year or another, may have been selected at random and received that survey in the mail or filled it out online. One of the questions that we've asked from the very beginning on that survey is how satisfied people are with the city's efforts to provide them with information about events, issues, programs, services. Next slide, please. So there are lots of ways that our communication division pulls and is interested in data and uses it to make decisions and to know how effective we are or aren't at our communication. Some of those might be how many people take action on our information that we share, how many people come out to an event that we've promoted, how many people open an email that we've sent out, how many comment or like a social media post. Those are all data points that we use to know how we're doing. But probably the single biggest one is this one we're going to talk to you about today. It's the satisfaction with the availability of information. And this performance measure is part of the City Council's second of 5 strategic priorities, and it's the priority to have strong community connections. Next slide. This measure matters a lot to us, and we think to residents and also to our internal client departments who try very hard to provide quality service and want the community to know about that service. So this is very important to us to be as transparent as possible as a city, to share the good information about everything that's available to you as a community member that we hope that you take advantage of, from events to services. And one of the things we communicate about a lot is opportunities for you to provide input to us, to shape the actual decisions that are happening in the city, because we really and truly believe that every resident, every community member should have a voice. Next slide. Our target is a lofty one, and I'm proud to say that we are exceeding our goal. We have set a goal to a target to have at least 75% of those survey respondents saying that they are very satisfied or satisfied with the availability of information. And in 2020, we saw 78.3% of residents indicate that they're satisfied or very satisfied. Next slide, please. As you can tell, the second set of data on this bar chart breaks down that satisfaction. It shows you that our score is 78% satisfaction. Around the country, the average satisfaction on this type of question is 42%. And then the comparison level of satisfaction for cities like Tempe, cities who are similar in size, is 53%. Next slide. On the left here, you're seeing that over time, and this is since 2016, the amount of dissatisfaction is decreasing while the amount of satisfaction is increasing. And since this has been one of the original questions on the survey since the city started conducting an annual resident survey back in 2007, we've seen overall increases of 11% in satisfaction with this particular question. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon.
Hello, this amazing GIS dashboard that is available at tempe.gov/strategic management provides a lot of in-depth details for people who love diving into the data. Reviewing this map of Tempe's character areas showed shades of blue, which indicate levels of satisfaction. We can see how satisfaction varies throughout the city. For example, the Kiwanis Park area has higher satisfaction than around Alameda. We can use this data to increase our outreach in a particular part of the city. Next slide, please. The sheer amount of demographics available in the GIS dashboard is impressive. You can look at the statistics by age, gender, and even whether or people rent or own their homes. There's so much data available that we can access to help us improve our communication efforts. And though we already have higher than the national average satisfaction levels, we do strive for improvement in all that we do. Next slide. The community survey always asks how residents get their information about the city. Tempe Today is continually one of the top ways that people do get their information. The city website is also a favorite source of information. TV news and social media are also primary ways that people like to learn about Tempe. Having this data helps us to take a layered approach in communicating with our community. Next slide. These communication outlets provide millions of opportunities to inform and educate. When planning for outreach, we do use a mix of the tools in our toolbox so that we can maximize our communication efforts. Tempe Today and the Tempe website are extremely effective methods to communicate. Our communication and media relations team have fostered great relationships with the media. These relationships are important to tell residents and people throughout the valley about all the awesome things that we do in Tempe. Our Tempe CMR team puts a lot of time and effort and thought into the city's social media channels. Consistent, robust, and creative content help to engage with and grow our followers on the various social channels. Also, in 2018, we launched our MailChimp platform that enables us to communicate more effectively than we ever have. In 2020 alone, we sent out 2 million emails. Next slide. In 2020, we used our MailChimp platform to set up communication efforts about the pandemic. On March 11th, the pandemic was declared. On March 12th, Tempe began the COVID-19 campaign using MailChimp. At first, we sent out e-newsletters 5 days a week to provide up-to-the-minute information about the coronavirus to residents and businesses. As time went on, we scaled back to putting them out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Currently, we produce the COVID-19 Roundup e-news on Mondays and Wednesdays. The Roundup offers a mix of the basics about the coronavirus, vaccines, programs, and services. And then we add in relevant articles, events, and things that are going on throughout Tempe. The response that we've received has been wonderful, and people really value this great communication tool. Next slide. Data from our tempe.gov website shows that the spike that occurred during the beginning of the pandemic, that people were really going to our website to get the most important information and to find out what was going on. Another spike occurred when a mayoral proclamation was announced in June about the mask mandate. The city's career and courts web pages are historically among the most visited pages on our website. This chart shows how our coronavirus page quickly became a highly visited page. Also of interest, our Golf Tempe, Ken McDonald's, and Rolling Hills web pages also climbed in popularity. With the pandemic closing much of normal life, our golf courses operated throughout the pandemic, and we saw a huge increase in rounds and revenue at both courses. Next slide. We are mindful that many Tempe residents may prefer the more traditional methods of outreach. We do utilize an array of traditional methods, like you can see here. During the pandemic, door hangers and postcards were especially effective. As our facilities continue to reopen, we can do more outreach with signage, posters, and flyers. Next slide. Living in the digital age that we do, we've really mastered the use of social media to communicate with our community. We have main accounts for the city on all of these channels. However, we also offer specialty accounts. For example, we have Facebook pages for Sustainable Tempe, Golf, Parks and Rec, and the library, to name a few. We customize the types of content and tone for each of the type of channel. So we're really reaching the people and communicating in a way that people like on those channels. As city facilities are reopening, we'll be using the reach screens once again to communicate important information to patrons. The Tempe website is essential for communication. We strive to make our website informative, timely, and helpful. Our CMR team will be back on May 6th at Accelerates to provide a more robust presentation about our Tempe website. Lastly, we collaborate with our many partners like DTA, Tempe Tourism, and the Tempe Chamber of Commerce to share important information. The media and our neighborhood leaders are also critical to helping inform people. Please go to the next slide, and I'll be returning the presentation back over to Nikki Ripley.
Thank you. Shannon mentioned balance in the ways we approach people. We reach people digitally now, and we also still have robust endeavors to reach people in quote unquote traditional ways. Those are the printed signs and banners and things she talked about. Reason we do that is in part because of information like this. So this slide, and when we turn to the next slide, we'll show you 2 demographic questions that are asked of residents in the annual survey. And this question is about how many of you residents have internet at home. And that percentage is 96% who've indicated that they do. And that number has increased substantially over the years and markedly even since 2016. So we keep an eye on numbers like this because we just need to know how our residents are able to access the information we're putting out. And it is all about balance, as we mentioned. Next slide. Similarly, this smartphone data is important to us. 88% of residents indicated that they do have a smartphone, and this has increased substantially in just the last 5 years or so. Next slide. Challenges that we face as a communication division. The number of tools in our toolbox that we can use, both digital and traditional, are increasing all the time. And we've got to ensure that we are where people are, whether that's virtually or otherwise. And so when a new tool becomes available to us, we take the time we need to assess it, determine which sort of segments of our audience are using those, and whether we want to engage in one of those new tools. So the number of tools is always increasing. The number of topics, importantly, is always increasing. So Tempe is a really robust city with a lot of programs, a lot of offerings, and a new program that may have been started 5 years ago, we still need to tell people about today. We need to remind them that this is out here and you can still take advantage of it. And at the same time, we have to tell you about the program that just launched last month. So we can't forget any important element of the entire array of things we need you to know as a resident. Social media, in order to get in front of people, say in particular with Facebook, if you don't pay at some small level to boost the post on Facebook, it may get served up to very few people. And so the cost to participate in social media are going up. The technology, we need to ensure we're staying in front of that and launching things like podcasts and all of the equipment and things we need to keep on top of. And then COVID brought us all sorts of new ways to reach people and participate with people, get their input at public meetings in ways that we didn't see coming. And so at some level, that mix of virtual and physical public meetings, for example, will no doubt continue. And so we're going to need to adapt to that in a long-term situation. Next slide, please. Strategies. These are the sort of topmost things that our group is pursuing over the next few years. And we don't take our success in this communication as gauged by the resident survey, we don't take that for granted. We're always pursuing the new thing, the new tactic to help us retain our edge. One of those things is we know we're going to be redesigning the tempe.gov homepage and some of the interior pages look and feel, and that's coming in 2022. As Shannon mentioned, we're going to be here at Tempe Accelerates again on May 6th, and we'll talk to you more about the website then. A second strategy is we know that we are going to be expanding our use of digital tools. We want to introduce a new Facebook account for the first time that is in Spanish only. We want to start a Facebook account that follows the theme of compassion. The city of Tempe underwent a branding process a few years ago, and one of the kind of pillars that our residents told us they identified with most about Tempe was this idea of compassion, that Tempe is a compassionate community. And so we want to provide a virtual home for all those compassion-themed sorts of things. So this new account would likely be a home for all the things that Human Services is doing, for instance. We know we want to start a social media account aimed exclusively at youth. We don't know exactly which tool that will be yet, but we're continuing to research that. And we want to get back to the idea of launching a city podcast, which we were on the verge of doing shortly before the pandemic. So it's time we got back to doing that. A third strategy is to continue implementing the visual portion of the city's brand, our logo and our look and feel. We're going to be redesigning the entryway signage that you see in 29 different locations around the city. And then we want to ensure we're keeping up with technology. We have recently acquired the ability to live stream from anywhere, and we want to fully realize that technology to be able to do that in the future. Next slide. And with that, we really are excited to hear your ideas and thoughts about how we can advance our performance and communication even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki and Shannon. Really appreciate the information about how you have such a great rating from our community and that you're always trying to move things forward. Just a reminder to our viewers, first of all, I would like to apologize for technical difficulties. We will have the slides and the entire recording posted at tempe.gov/Tempe Accelerates. But as a reminder, we also invite you to suggest strategies in the Q&A feature of the Teams app. You can find that in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And for this section of the session, we do have a couple questions in regards to COVID and how that affected city communication. Nikki and Shannon, what strategies did you have to change during in early 2020?
Thanks for that. We are really proud of how our team mobilized very quickly to make the conversation, the provision of information to the community about COVID-19 job number one, really from day one, as you saw. And that continues today. It really is today and will be for some undetermined amount of time, job number one for our communication division. It was an honor, really, I think, to a person, everyone on our team, to be a source of reliable, trusted information for our community that was very much used throughout the pandemic to carry the message about doing what we call the basics, the hand washing, the wearing of masks, the distancing, as well as in the time since the vaccine has arrived, letting people know where they can get vaccines and ensuring that they know it's important that they do get the vaccine. So Shannon, did you have any thoughts about our COVID communication as well?
Yes, I do. One of the great things that happened, especially early on in the pandemic, is that we were able to quickly collaborate with the many different departments within the city to put up relevant information. For example, our household products collection center, we closed that in the early days of the pandemic. And when we reopened, we wanted the public to know how they could safely go to that facility and how they could recycle their materials there. Our compost yard was closed in the early days of the pandemic. And when we reopened that, we worked with solid waste department to make sure that we were letting people know how they could safely go to that facility again. Everything from our customer service department, the library, Parks and Rec, all of our programs, we had to quickly adapt and figure out how we could offer those programs and services online or virtually. So I'm really proud of how the whole city came together to really help our residents and businesses understand and navigate living in our city during a pandemic.
I would agree. If I could add real quick too, that an important part of what we were doing and still are doing during the pandemic is holding up or attempting to help the business community, talking about the small businesses that were still open. You know, nationally, the business community was struggling immensely, and we were kind of proud to play a part in telling the stories of the people who were still open and operating safely, as well as to be a source for encouragement to community members to tell the stories of people and neighbors helping each other, checking on each other, visiting and holding kind of distanced, masked neighborhood events. All those kinds of human interest stories were an important piece of the pandemic communication puzzle as well.
Thank you. Similar to police trust score, city information is all about connection. What are you doing and what strategies do you have in place in regards to connecting with demographics, specifically youth demographics across the city? We know that teens and young adults like TikTok and Snapchat. So what are your strategies for connection with different generations?
Thank you for that
Sorry,
question.
go ahead, Shannon.
That's okay. Thank you for that question. And we actually, last year before the pandemic, or in 2019, we conducted stakeholder groups with youth within our community to find out the ways that they would like to be communicated with. And basically, they didn't have a consistent answer for us. It is harder to reach youth who typically aren't on Facebook or Twitter or Nextdoor. They do like the Snapchat and TikTok. Snapchat and TikTok have, up to this point, been a little bit challenging to use as a city because of the requirements we need to archive our social media channels. However, we do target parents of those youth. So for example, if we are trying to communicate about a College Connect program, we would put information out on Facebook or Nextdoor or Twitter to reach relatives or parents of those students, and hopefully they will share the information. So we are mindful that they are a challenge to reach youth, but we are working to do a better job of that. Nikki, what would you like to add?
I think that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Nikki and Shannon, again, for your information and sharing your strategies about how we accelerate our satisfaction with availability of city information. I'd also like to thank Jeff Glover and Angelique in regards to our police trust score. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to our city manager, Andrew Ching.
All right, thank you. Another great presentation, very informative. Thanks for all the good questions as well. Encourage you all to join us again at our next Tempe Accelerate session. That'll be on May 6th. We'll have 2 more presentations on city website satisfaction and online service satisfaction, and continue to be on the lookout for other upcoming Accelerate sessions, as you can see on the screen right now. Thank you all again. Appreciate it. I know our teams appreciate it. The organization appreciates it, and it will help us to continue to provide the best level of service to our community. So thank you very much.